Hello, I am Cynthia Cabrera. I am the Executive Director of the Smoke-Free Alternatives Trade Association, another somewhat awkward name, but we call it SFATA for lack of a better name. But we are the largest trade association in the U.S. and probably anywhere together. We've got, there we go. We represent several different segments of the industry, and so what I want to do, my perspective today, is to give to you an understanding of the U.S. business market and what the challenges are in creating standards and having them accepted. So we have actually more than that. We have more members than that, but as you can see, we represent the vape stores, online retailers, distributors, manufacturers, and there are a lot of these. It's very nice because actually everyone's presentation kind of like feeds into my presentation. They put in a lot of the information I took out for time purposes. But as you know, there are probably 10,000 to 15,000 different retail locations. There are probably 2,000 to 3,000 manufacturers. These are all things we have to take into account when we look at product standards for the industry. So what's important to understand when you want to talk about standards, and this is just for the purposes of this conversation about standards, it's important to understand the makeup of the industry, what the challenges are in the U.S., what we're looking at specifically. So the vapor industry is composed of different segments. We've got the cowboys. The cowboys are, in the States we call them the gangsters, right? They come in and they make a lot of money. They don't have a lot of interest in long term. They're not really concerned about product standards. They may be making a quality product, but we don't really know because they're not really vested in the process. They're just in it to make some money and they're going to get out or not. They're not really concerned. We've also got the tobacco camp. The tobacco camp refers to people that have either a tobacco background, and this is important in the when we're talking about product standards, this is important to understand because there's a subtle distinction here. So we have some vapor companies that now are filled with or have key positions, people who used to be in the tobacco industry, and we have a lot of tobacco researchers and top scientists that have very good information they can share with us that is extremely valuable. However, the caveat is that when tobacco people or experts with a background in tobacco look at this product in terms of standards and decide to apply standards as they would a tobacco product, it's a problem. And so there's a subtle distinction. I had someone, a very well-known tobacco scientist, say to me one day that these products were exactly like combustible cigarettes. He said the only difference is the heating element. That's it. Well, that's not true. That's absolutely not true at all. So when we talk about standards, one of the barriers to standards is who is involved, who is doing it, what is their willingness, and what position are they coming from? What are they willing to look at, and are they willing to treat this as a separate product that should have its own regulation and should have its own category? We've got the short-term people that are in the business that understand they're trying to do the best that they can right now. And these manufacturers, some of them have already made the decision that if and when the deeming regulations don't go their way, I said when, but so that's a little negative, but they've decided they will get out. We've got established outliers, which are well-established companies that don't participate with the rest of the industry. They go off, they do their own thing, they have the money to do that, and they don't dialogue with the rest of the industry, they don't talk with the industry, they do their own thing. And then we've got the stakeholders. The stakeholders are the people who have a background in business, who got into this, would like to leave a legacy, would like to do it properly, would like to see proper standards developed, but it takes the entire industry to be able to do that. So as you can see, we've got a lot of different types of elements within the vapor industry, and they don't all work well together, which is problematic. So where do we go? There are a couple of ways that we can go. Of course, the FDA, at least in the US, is the big elephant in the room. What are we going to do about FDA, or what is FDA going to do about us? Obviously, you all know that the comment period for the proposed deeming regulations was extended. Everyone's diligently working on those, putting in comments and that kind of thing. But as far as standards go, what are our options with the FDA? What are our options in general? The FDA is not while they pay attention to standards bodies and organizations, they're not under any obligation whatsoever to accept any standards that are proposed by anyone. So they do pay attention to them. They do like to see the industry working together and trying to achieve critical mass in terms of setting a standard, but they're not under any obligation to accept the standard that we propose. So that's something to consider. So what do we do about that? If we look at ANSI, ANSI was in the news lately. We're all familiar with ANSI. So ANSI coordinates standards setting for the U.S. It's a voluntary move. They work very well. They're an extremely efficient organization. They've been around for over 100 years. Fine. ANSI has specific requirements in order for standards to be set or to be approved through them. What ANSI doesn't set standards. What they do is they approve the people who set them, the developers. So, in our industry, what do we have? We have a lot of players that are not on the same page. So, we've got over 170 members. ANSI has, who we work with closely all the time, ANSI has 21 or 28 members, but we've got 2,000 to 3,000 manufacturers out there. There's a disparity there. There's a big gap that we need to address. We need to work on that. So, what does ANSI look for? And I'm using ANSI as an example because it's the easiest one, and in any industry, when you go to set standards, you have to meet minimum requirements, and ANSI has them all nicely spelled out, so it's easy to use theirs. So really the biggest thing is that we need industry buy-in. We need stakeholder buy-in. And we don't have that right now. We're working towards it, and we're getting there, but we don't have it. So we've got 2,000 to 3,000 manufacturers. One of the issues is getting everybody on the same page, but how do we do that? Because again, we've got the makeup, we've got the US market and how different it is and how segmented it is. Some of these people are not literally as invested as other people, figuratively or financially. So we need to look at that. The public view, due process. We have to ensure that all the stakeholders that are involved are listened to, that they are participants in the standard setting. And I don't necessarily mean consumers specifically, I mean the different manufacturers. And I want to talk about that for 1 second. There is a big distinction in the US, and it gets conflated quite a bit. There are hobbyists and there are manufacturers. There are people who decided that they make a yummy liquid, and so they distribute it and then they start selling it. These are not the people that we are focusing on. They're going to go away, they're going to go by the wayside, and that's okay. That's fine. That's how we want it. What we're looking at are the manufacturers that want to be in it for the long term, but aren't sure how we're going to achieve these standards. The other thing is, make sure it's the right one, yeah, okay. So the other thing is getting data. And this industry, it's very new. It doesn't have the luxury of waiting for being given the time to mature. This is a very new industry that has to mature very quickly. That being said, when you're going to set standards, one of the issues is data gathering, data sharing. That's not happening very much. It's starting to happen slowly. So what we're looking at is this paradigm. Do we have the time to do it in the face of the threat of regulation from FDA? Do we have the time to get everybody on the same page for their own good? And again, some businesses, some companies understand that they need to do this. Others need to be brought around. I'm rushing because of the time, but sorry about that. Some need to be brought around, but again, we've got looming regulation and we've got what needs to be done. And do those things match up? Will we have the time to do it? We don't know. But we do have industry agreement going forward on some things. We're already working on some things. We've worked with ICETA, FIVE, ANSI. We've built relationships with them. We've started discussions about standards, and not necessarily setting standards from the beginning. ANSI has done a fine job. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. What we need is the industry as a whole participating so that we can sell these standards as something that is viable and understood and agreed upon by the industry. And that's what we're working toward. Age verification. This is something everyone agrees to. We rolled out our own age verification because the vapor industry made it very clear that they didn't want to be associated with age verification that came from tobacco. And that's okay. Sometimes, we were talking to somebody last night, and we were discussing the vapor industry and tobacco, and how sometimes they're aligned, and sometimes they're not. And I said, you know, it's kind of like spending the night with someone you don't really like. It's the same thing. Tobacco has a lot of experts. Tobacco has a lot of information that we can use, but fundamentally this is a different product. And again, I go back to the issue of people with a tobacco background looking at this and setting standards for this. Are they doing it based on a tobacco background, or are they doing it based on a very good product that has the potential to eliminate the harm caused by combustible tobacco? Childproof caps. This is something that everybody can do. I think Clive said, just do it already. There's no reason not to do it. Let's just do it. Labeling, we've already established minimum requirements for labeling. A lot of people are already doing it. There's the issue of, you know, the size of the bottles, how will they do it? And again, in the US we have other issues, which are that some legislators are suggesting a certain size bottle, whereas others are saying, well, let's make it on a bigger bottle, let's do this, let's do that. And so in the face of all this uncertainty, it's very difficult for industry to know what to do and how to move forward purposely and invest the money that's required to do this. Vaporia, Pro-Vape, these are, Vaporia is, he's on our board. His name is Bill Barkowski. He was the former JV partner for Royan. So he's got a lot of background in electrical engineering. He's also a PhD. Pro-Vape is one of the largest US brands. These guys are working together on battery safety. But there's already battery safety. We've got the UNDG 38.3 standards that already apply a lot of tests before the products can even be imported into the United States. So there are some things that are there that we're looking at. ANSI has been working on the liquids, and again, we just need to get the industry together to work on these things. This is not meant to be a downer or a negative. This is meant to be pragmatic about what we're facing as an industry and what we can do to overcome not necessarily apathy, but concern on the part of business owners and stakeholders about whether they will have a business if they invest this time, if they do this. Because again, I think Lou mentioned it or somebody mentioned it, the FDA could come in and just wipe out this industry, and they did all that for nothing. So this is what business owners think about. That's it. Thank you.